Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Edwards. I've been teaching history and politics at Spring Arbor University for about 12 years now. When people think about Spring Arbor, words like chapel, core, cross-cultural, chickens, canoeing might come to mind. Not high in the list probably is lawyers. And that's a mistake because Spring Arbor has actually had a great track record for a long time of preparing students for successful careers in law school and then successful careers as lawyers. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight is law school. Let me do a couple of advertisements first. If you're a current student or prospective student who's thinking about law school, we encourage you to talk to two SAU faculty. Matt Hill in philosophy and Jeremy Norwood in sociology and criminal justice. Matt Hill has been helping students prepare for their LSAT exams for several years now, so he would be a great resource. And Jeremy Norwood, he recently passed his bar exam, so he's a practicing lawyer, so he'll be great to talk to as well. And in fact, the criminal justice department just this fall is rolling out a new 4-class law preparation, law 100, 200, 300, 400. So that's something that you would want to take advantage of as well too. The other advertisement would be just to stay on this Zoom or you can reach out to me. Again, my name is Mark Edwards, markedwards@arbor.edu. And if you want to, I can put you in touch. I'm sure that the people we'll be talking with tonight will be glad to talk with you. We have 3 distinguished SAU alumni who have gone on to law school. A few have graduated. One is probably nearing that stage as well too. So we are very excited to have a conversation with them tonight and see what they are up to. I had the privilege of talking to them, I believe last year, maybe a year and a half ago, and they were excited to talk to us again, and we're glad to have them here as well too. So we're going to take about 30-40 minutes to kind of get to know them, have some questions for them, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at that point. So I'm just going to ask each of our alumni to introduce themselves now, beginning with Destiny.
Hello, everyone here and all the people that will be watching this recording at some point in the future. My name is Destiny. I graduated from SAU in the spring of 2020. So I was the COVID graduating class. My entire first year of law school was virtual. And then a couple weeks of this year were too. So I've had a little bit of a unique law school experience, to say the least. Yeah, I've just been in law school since I graduated in 2020. So that's what I've been doing.
All right. My name is Brian Weber. I graduated from SAU in 2016 with a major in history and political economy, so double major. And then after that, I went and worked for an organization called International Justice Mission in Thailand for a year. And then after I got back, I went to the University of Michigan Law School. I would kind of had the mirror experience of what Destiny had, whereas my second half of law school was the COVID era that was all online. So yes, that was definitely a unique experience, and hopefully none of you who are thinking about law school will have to do the same thing.
Hey everyone, I'm Clarissa. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from SAU in 2014, which seems like an unreasonably long time ago. And then I actually also did a International Justice Mission stint after I graduated from SAU before I went to law school. I was not with Brian though, sadly. I was stationed in Mumbai in India. I had applied for the IJM internship and for law school at the same time and just kind of figured like, well, we'll see which one makes me an offer. And they both did. So I ended up deferring law school for a year so I could work with IJM in India. And then when I came back, I went to Michigan State University for law school. So while I was at Michigan State, I focused on immigration law and also American Indigenous law too, almost sort of accidentally, but that ended up being pretty fun. And then when I graduated in 2018, my first job was working for the US Department of Justice as a clerk at the Detroit Immigration Court. And so I ended up doing that for a year and a half. So that's where I was during the COVID thing. I experienced COVID at the Department of Justice, which was interesting. Lots of stories there too. And then I did, so I guess at the very end, tail end of the Department of Justice stint, they loaned me out to the Department of Health and Human Services, where I was still employed as an attorney, but doing very non-lawyerly things. I was essentially acting as a camp counselor for kids who had just immigrated from Central America. So that was a fun break from lawyering. And then just recently, I guess it was in July of last year, I joined the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, which is a nonprofit that provides pro bono services to immigrants in Michigan. And so right now I am working with other pro bono attorneys to help all of the recent Afghan arrivals apply for asylum in the US.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for those introductions. So what we'd like to start off with is why law school? Why'd you go to law school? When did you know that you wanted to go to law school? Was that kind of during college? Did you come into college knowing you wanted to go to law school? So I think we'll start with Destiny again.
Yeah, so I knew going into undergrad that I wanted to go to law school. I figured that out in high school, just looked at my skill set, found out what I was good at, and everyone always told me I was good at arguing. So go to law school. That's not a good reason to go to law school. So don't listen to people that tell you that. But I went into SAU knowing that I wanted to go to law school. So that kind of allowed me to tailor my educational journey from the beginning for what I knew I wanted to go into. And so right off the bat, I double majored in history and philosophy in philosophy and English actually at first. And then I switched to history because English wasn't working out too well with me for the workload. But switching to a double major in philosophy and history was actually the best decision I made because my classes in both of those departments really helped prepare me, I think, for the law school style of curriculum and classes. So yeah, I wanted to go to law school to help people. I didn't put that in there, but that's originally why I chose law school, and I knew the medical field was not it for me. So law school it was.
Brian?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely a later decision for me than it was for Destiny. I really hadn't thought about going to law school until I was already at SAU. I actually came into SAU as an undecided major, and then Mark lassoed me into the history department. And from there, I got really interested in kind of politics and government, and of course history. And I was leaning a little bit more towards maybe going to graduate school for something like political science or maybe history. But eventually I kind of leaned away from that, thinking that I wanted to do something that I would have a better chance of getting a guaranteed job at the end. And then when I went to work for IJM in Thailand, I was working with a lot of lawyers. My boss was a lawyer. A lot of the staff there were lawyers, and seeing what they were able to do with their legal training to be able to help other people got me really interested in what it would be like to be a lawyer. And I thought that my skills that I built at SAU, writing, communicating, things like that, would translate very well into the legal profession. So from there, I decided to take the LSAT and applied to law schools. Once I got into law school, I kind of leaned a little bit away from the human rights law, which was kind of what got me interested in the first place. And I thought that probably wasn't what I wanted to do as a profession. But one first piece of advice that I can share is that if you go into law school dead set on doing something, there's a really good chance you're going to change your mind. So don't pigeonhole yourself from the beginning. You might end up liking something you didn't think you'd like, or not liking what you intended to do. So from the time I got to Michigan for law school, well, honestly, I still don't know what I want to do, but I started leaning more towards business and civil litigation. So I think that's what I'm ultimately going to end up doing. I'm currently working as a law clerk for a federal judge at the Court of Appeals for veterans claims. So it's a pretty specialty niche area of law, but it's been a really good experience so far. And I'm going to be doing that until the end of next year.
Excellent. Clarissa.
Yeah, so I did not really have any particular desire to be a lawyer, even when I started law school. It just sort of seemed like a default. Like I didn't really want to do anything else either. And I also, similarly to Destiny, had some people tell me I was good at arguing and could put those skills to good use. Yeah, so when I was at Spring Arbor, my major was global studies, and I had a minor in psychology. And so I think it was probably at some point at Spring Arbor, probably after talking to Dr. Norwood, that I decided that I could go to law school. I just wanted to do something useful. Like I wanted to be able to help, and law seemed to be an area that would like suit my strengths and like would give me an opportunity to do something helpful, and also like push back the decision about what I was actually going to do until a later date. And so yeah, I think I'm far enough out from that process now. I don't remember any like specific turning point or decision, but I think I know that when I was at Spring Arbor, I was really interested in the issue of human trafficking. And I remember we had a couple of, I don't remember what they're called, like focus series. Is that what they're called? There was a focus series on human trafficking when I was there, I think must have been like 2011, 2012. And I was really interested in doing something to like help with that. And so that was kind of my idea still when I went into law school. I really wanted to go to U of M because they have like specifically a human trafficking clinic, but I didn't get into U of M. I went to Michigan State instead. But then it turned out that the human trafficking clinic at U of M hired interns outside of the U of M. So I ended up working for them anyway, which was great. I got that experience. And like Brian said, when you go into law school thinking you want to do something, very often you end up changing your mind. And so it was in the human trafficking clinic when I was doing that internship, my 1L summer, that I was introduced to the field of immigration law. And because some of the clients we worked with had been trafficked domestically within the United States, but some of them had been trafficked internationally. And those people required legal assistance for their immigration status. And then I went back to school my 2L year, and it turned out that Michigan State actually has a really robust immigration law program and a really cool immigration law clinic. And so I did all those things and ended up realizing that like there isn't really like a human trafficking law, and I learned a lot about how like the reason that trafficking exists is because of like marginalized identities that make people more vulnerable, and lack of immigration status is one of those things. So that became like a very focused like practical area that I could start studying and help people that way.
Excellent. Strong theme of service and wanting to help people, running through this. When people think of law school, they often think of money, and they should, right? Lawyers can live a comfortable life, but it's also, the law is a great way, if you're interested in serving people. Law is a great way to become empowered to be able to serve people in unique ways and in extraordinarily helpful ways. And I think that's being communicated here through everyone. But really what everyone wants to know, I think, is, is law school like, now I'm forgetting the movie with Elle. Legally Blonde. Is law school like Legally Blonde, right? Are the teachers really like that, or are the grad students really that, mean to each other? Do you have time to go to a nail salon, or is your life just consumed with the studies? So tell us a little bit about your law school experience. Is it, I mean, what surprised you? How's it been? We can, start with Destiny.
Um, well, this is really inconvenient time for me to be answering this question because I'm in the week before my exams start. So right now, I feel like I have time for nothing. But throughout the rest of the semester, I think as long as you have good time management skills, law school is very doable. But notice how I preface that with time management skills. I think one of the things a lot of people don't expect coming into law school is that you can get off by doing all your readings the Sunday before class, or things like that. And that's just not the case. Law school is more than a full-time job most of the time. So you have to be able to manage your time well in order to give yourself balance during law school. I think balance is really important. Law school is pretty much what I expected, but I'm just a crazy preparer for the worst possible outcomes always. So it ended up being easier than I expected it to be, but pretty along the lines. I think I felt pretty prepared for law school, partly because of the coursework I took at SAU. A lot of it was in the philosophy and history departments, reading a lot of material before you get to class and coming to class ready to talk about it. And that's pretty much what every law school assignment is. So in law school, your entire grade for each class is usually based off one exam at the end of the semester. And that's your entire grade for the whole semester. And you're also graded on a curve. So technically you're in competition with all of your classmates also taking that exam, because if you score higher than all of them, you get an A. If you score lower than all of them, you get a C, if that makes sense. So everything is graded on a curve, and it's usually based off one grade for that class. And so the rest of the whole semester, all you're doing is learning the material for that final exam from day one. So yeah, was there anything else you wanted me to cover?
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Brian.
Yeah, so I would actually say that Legally Blonde is surprisingly accurate, more so than you would think a movie would be. At least the first half. Towards the second half, it gets a little bit silly. But yeah, law school, at least at Michigan, is still very much the Socratic method, very much reading cases and being asked about them by your professors in class, which is definitely something that it takes time to get used to. And it's intimidating at first when you're in a study hall with 90 people and you get asked to recite the facts of whatever case you read for that week. So it definitely builds your public speaking skills very quickly. As for the workload, I think that Destiny was right on that it's very manageable if you have good time management skills. I'm not saying that I had good time management skills. And I think at the same time, there are very few things in law school that are especially difficult on their own. It's more just that there's so much material and it's very much a grind to get through it all. I'd also like to reiterate what Destiny said about being graded on a curve and being in competition with your classmates. That's definitely a strange experience. I had never experienced anything like that before coming to law school. And at times it can be frustrating to know that even if you know a subject really well, if it just so happens that your classmates know it a little bit better than you're not going to get a good grade. And that can also create competition among a class. I didn't see that a great deal, but there are definitely, you'll run into unpleasant people in every walk of life, and law school is no different. I would say it's probably a little higher than average. But overall, I don't think that law school, once you get into it, is this big scary thing like it's easy to imagine. It's like a job. You put in the work, and then you're generally rewarded based on how much work you put in. And also, like Destiny said, I'm just repeating everything she said, but I found that my time at SAU was a really good preparation for law school, especially, for instance, in my history classes, having to consume a great deal of information and then narrow it down to the most important parts. That is maybe the biggest single thing that you'll do in law school. So that I found that to be very helpful.
Clarissa?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think I'm just trying to think about how to phrase it, because like I don't think I really have particularly good time management skills, but somehow I managed to make it through law school. I think the thing that first hit me like my first semester was like, oh, like this is doable. Like this is not an impossible feat. Like this is something that like can be done by like a human person. I think that I had never really seen Legally Blonde until like my friends at Spring Arbor like forced me to when they realized I was going to law school and I'd never seen it. But between Legally Blonde and other like, I don't know, like the Paper Chase or like other like widely publicized law media, they make it seem like very hard and very scary, which it is. But like also if you're reading the material and taking notes, like you can do it, like it's doable. I think the thing that I figured out probably I don't know at what point my 1L year is that like it is actually like physically impossible to complete all the work that is assigned to you. And like that is part of the thing. So in addition to time management, you also have to like learn how to prioritize and figure out like, okay, like this professor assigned me like this much reading, like I can skim the introduction to the case to understand the facts, and then kind of like maybe like skip a couple pages and figure out like, okay, looks like where they're talking about like the central legal issue. And then you don't have to like read all like 40 pages or whatever the assigned reading was. And then of course, you're also like going to have different professors with different expectations. Some professors I found at Michigan State, they don't do the scary cold call thing. They just don't like that, so they don't do that. And those classes are great because you don't have to like read as closely for fear of being cold called in front of everybody. Or there's some professors who like they'll do cold call, but they'll like go on a rotation, so you can with like reasonable accuracy predict whether or not you should spend a lot of time reading the case the night before or not. And then there's also some classes are going to be harder, and you do have to spend the time, like you just aren't going to know what's going on in class or be able to follow along at all unless you have actually like sat down like with a highlighter and read every aspect of the case. And so it's just trying to figure out what you need to focus on and what is okay if it doesn't get done. And that's going to look different for every person depending on what like your learning style is. I will also say that like in regards to like having time outside of law school, like you can do it. Like it's definitely easy to like get sucked in and feel like you're like, oh, I just have to like nonstop work so I can get all this done. I remember that it was my first year in law school and I was like, I need to do something outside of law school so I don't like actually lose my mind. I need to think about something outside of law school. So I ended up I actually remember there was a group from Spring Arbor, and I never did it when I was in Spring Arbor. They would drive out to Lansing and volunteer with an ESL program at the Free Methodist Church out in Lansing. And so now that I was living in Lansing, I decided to go start volunteering with that group. So I did that for the first couple of years. Just on Wednesday nights, I would go and like hang out with a bunch of kids, which was just like delightfully the opposite of law school. So I think that is important to like have something like that to give some variety, so you can recharge yourself for doing the law school things as well.
All right. Great. I mean, you're really kind of, peeling the veil back here of law school, demystifying a little bit, right? I mean, law school is what you're describing. It sounds like law school was like my experience in history, right? Law school is grad school, and grad school is can be hard at times, but it's it's a lot of work, but it's definitely manageable, and you do need to have those kind of outlets that Clarissa talked about as well too, to stay sane. It can't just all be about the studies and stuff. So great. This is kind of a free-for-all question. Any crazy stories you want to share? If you don't have any, I mean, that's fine, but I don't know, anything that just was really unexpected or surprising or
It's like,
impactful you wouldn't think it would be. So law school is not like Legally Blonde, and it's very
I don't know if there's anything that from my experience, that was especially crazy. I mean, there are interesting things that happen all the time, but I can't think of anything that was especially out of the ordinary. I guess one thing that I would say is that I made a lot more friends in law school than I thought I would. Like some of my really good friends who I still like talk to or text on a daily basis, I met in law school, which I wasn't really expecting to happen. I thought that it would be a lot less like undergrad in that regard.
I had a professor who made us all sing like Latin phrases in class, like a song full of Latin words. We had to sing the whole class, and he would just like keep singing until everyone joined.
that's wonderful.
That sorry if Clarissa, you were going to say something. That actually jogged a memory for me in my evidence class. Our professor said that if there was this one particular case, I forget what the case was, but he said that if you wrote a song based on the case and performed it in front of the class, then you would get extra credit. And so some friends of mine wrote a song and they asked me to play guitar. So we got up there in front of, I don't know, 70, 80 of our classmates and sang a parody of Piano Man for this case. And it was quite fun. Unfortunately, that was the semester that we lost all of our grades due to the COVID pandemic. So we didn't get any extra credit, but at least we got to sing the song, and that was a good memory.
Better be a recording of it.
all I'm really thinking of is just like really goofy stories about like quirky professors. And so like some in like really obnoxious ways. Like there was one professor that like just constantly mispronounced students' names, like names that like shouldn't be mispronounced. Like I think she mispronounced Sarah. She said Sarah, and she's like from Boston. Like it was very strange. Like, and then also like she would just, it just seemed to have like some weird like disconnect from reality. Like I remember like it was a project-based class. It was like a small like little 2-credit class, and I had to like, I was going to be gone on the day that I had been assigned to like present my thing. And I found this out at the beginning of the semester. So I just went up to her right away and was like, hey, I'm gonna be gone. She said, oh, that's great. Come back, like I'll fix it. And then she didn't fix it. Then I go back again. And I'm like, I'm gonna be out of town. She's like, what are you doing out of town? I'm like, I'm going to be out of town. Like you don't get to know what I'm doing out of town. That doesn't matter. And then I also had some like quirky professors in really charming ways. Like there's one, he every single email that he would like send out to the class, he would address it to beloved students of civil procedure or beloved students of evidence. And that was really fun. Yeah. I know that there are more crazy stories. I was hoping that either Brian or Destiny stories would jog a memory for me too, but I'll let you know if I think of any other ones.
So quirky professors, huh? Can't relate. I'm sorry, SAU probably didn't give you experience with quirky professors there. So you had to find them all in law school, I guess. Let's talk a little bit more about your SAU years, things you did to prepare for law school, maybe extracurriculars that you did. I should mention this. A lot of students think that what they study as an undergrad is really important for law school. That's why a lot of students will gravitate towards political science, towards criminal justice. None of you were political science or criminal justice majors, which just kind of reinforces what we already know, is that there's a lot of different majors that will help you, get ready for law school. History, philosophy, and English are top ones, but so are sociology, global studies, classics, art, humanities, political science, and criminal justice. Yes, there's so many different fields that SAU students have majored in and gone on to have great careers in law school. So I think that's one thing that just your stories kind of reveal, is that it's not so much what you study, is more as how you study, and did you have the preparation for the kind of work you're doing in law school. Were you doing that as undergrads as well too, in a lot of different fields, particularly at a place like SAU, a four-year liberal arts college. A lot of different majors are having you do the kind of things that you're going to be successful in any graduate school, but certainly in law school. But so maybe beyond just your majors, is there things you did, LSAT preparation? How did you prepare for LSATs? When did you start? When did you take your tests? Extracurriculars that you might have done that were valuable to you? Turn it over. We'll start with, I think, Clarissa, and then Brian and Destiny.
So as far as LSAT prep, I did not prepare very much for the LSAT. There was another student who was taking the LSAT at the same time as me, Gallant, and so he and I studied together. And I think I really only did concentrated studying for maybe a month and a half before the LSAT. I think it must have been fall semester of it must have been my senior year, I think, that I took it before. Does that make sense time-wise? To take the LSAT to apply. Maybe it would have been junior year, but I remember I just bought, I think it was a Kaplan LSAT prep guide, and just worked through some of the problems there. I ended up not scoring super high on the LSAT. It wasn't terrible. I think it was I think I got a 56, which is not super great, but also it got me into Michigan State, and that was, now I am a lawyer. So it worked. I guess you could say I studied the right amount, because if I had studied more, then I would have put too much effort into it. But yeah, I think as far as what I kinds of classes that I took or things that I did at Spring Arbor that helped prepare me. I know I did Model Arab League with you, Dr. Edwards, and then and that was helpful, at least for the public speaking side of things, which of course is not really necessary to be a lawyer, but it is helpful for the cold call in class sort of thing. And then I think the other thing, like you were talking about, it doesn't really matter what subject matter you're studying. You can have any major whatsoever and go into law school and be just fine. The thing that is really helpful is having good analytical skills and good writing skills. And so I think probably the class that helped me the most, I took a logic class. And I don't even know if that's being offered anymore. And I actually don't remember the name of the professor who I took it from.
Probably Dr. Brewer.
Oh, yep, that was it. Yep, that was Dr. Brewer, of course. I remember him very specifically. I just couldn't remember his name. Yeah, so the logic class with Dr. Brewer was really helpful in learning how to like construct arguments. I actually ended up being a TA for the writing class at Michigan State. And it was surprising to me how many students just didn't understand like how to frame an argument, which is the whole thing about being a lawyer. You're making arguments. I really was grateful that I didn't have to just like write filler words in papers anymore. Like as long as I could say the thing concisely, it like didn't matter how long it took me to say. And in fact, it was better if I could do it more concisely with less words. So yeah, understanding like how logic and rhetoric works and how to construct an argument well was probably the most helpful thing.
Brad?
Yeah. So I don't think that I really did any extracurriculars while I was at SAU that contributed to, I guess, my law school experience. I remember
I remember you not doing model Arab League.
I studiously avoided doing model Arab League. I think it was to avoid the public speaking, if I recall correctly, but here I am regardless. So unfortunately, I can't really speak to that. For the LSAT preparation, though, I used the Logic Bible series, I think it's called, and I found that to be very good. I really liked it. And I think I spent about 2.5 or 3 months preparing, doing about an hour or two a day. It was while I was in Thailand, so occasionally I would have time during my workday where I could, just pull out the book and study a little bit, which was really convenient. I also took the LSAT in Thailand, which I don't really recommend an international LSAT test, like testing experience. It's not ideal, but it worked out okay. And then I actually ended up taking it again because I wanted to see if I could get better scholarships. And the second time around, I think I studied for like 4 weeks or something like that. For preparing for the LSAT, I think it's really important to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. For instance, you might be really good at the short answer section, but you might be bad at the logic games. And so you can really focus in on what you need to work on most. Yeah, and I guess in terms of LSAT preparation, I don't have too much more. Was there an additional part of the question that I'm missing out on?
Nope, that was it. Good,
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate what Clarissa and Mark both said about what you study in undergrad doesn't inhibit you from going to law school, especially if you're going to law school for the money. Anyone watching this video in STEM, go to law school, because patent law, trademark law, biotechnology is huge right now. That STEM people make a lot of money in the legal field. So any STEM people listening to this, it really doesn't matter what you study in undergrad. However, some majors do prepare you better for the kinds of work you'll be doing in law school. I think, like Clarissa said, being able to write well and frame arguments is really important. And also being able to read quickly and summarize information quickly is really, really important. So if you are a STEM person who's considering going to law school, I think my recommendation would be to find something you enjoy reading and just read for fun so that you're used to it by the time you get to law school. Because a scientific textbook is a whole different kind of reading from reading cases where you have facts and it's almost like a story that you need to deduce important pieces out of. So that's my one kind of advice. When I was at SAU, I was preparing for the LSAT the second semester of my junior year at Spring Arbor. And in January of that second semester of my junior year, I took a practice LSAT test, pen and paper, without ever having looked at an LSAT question before. And just so I knew where I was starting from the beginning, which I think is a great thing for anyone to do. And then after that, I did an independent study with Matt Hill for that second semester, where I think it was like 9 hours a week of LSAT studying. And so My LSAT experience was a little weird because I was like the first guinea pig class where they were transitioning from paper testing to online testing. And so everyone who went I went in the summer between junior and senior year, everyone the day that I took the test went into the testing room without knowing whether they were going to get a paper exam or an electronic exam because they were splitting them 50-50 across random test centers across the United States. And so when I was studying for the LSAT, I had to study using both paper materials and paper tests and online materials with online format. And yeah, it sucked. My score wasn't as high as I wanted it to be. I was expecting better for myself, but I didn't want to take it a second time because the first time was like the worst experience ever. So I ended up at MSU, and I think it's important to not stress out too much about your LSAT score because I didn't do very well, and now I'm in the top 3% of my class. And so LSAT score does not determine if you'll be a good attorney or a good law student. So I think that everyone listening to this takes that into account. I did MAL and Luke and Zoe, I don't know if I said your name right, but if you guys aren't doing MAL, I highly recommend it. Not even as law school preparation, but it was just fun. It's a fun weekend, especially if you're competitive and like to be challenged intellectually. I think it was a really great experience for me. So I highly recommend. I also did an independent study with Dr. Edwards. I really wanted to prepare somehow for law school because I knew that's where I was headed in the long run. And so I did an independent study with Dr. Edwards on constitutional history, the history of the Constitution. And that actually has really helped in some of my classes for law school. So for example, I took history of chattel slavery. So the history of owning people as property this semester, and there's a lot of constitutional issues that I read about in my independent study with Dr. Edwards. So I came into that class just a step ahead of everyone, which was kind of cool. And then what else did I do? Oh, I did my honors thesis in history. I did it on a constitutional law topic, and in my Con Law 2 class last semester, the topic of my Spring Arbor honors thesis was like a huge portion of our class. So I had already been a step ahead on understanding the material. So that was very helpful too. So yeah, I think I covered all the sub parts of that question.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So much great insight and advice here.
I just wanted, can I interrupt quickly? I just wanted to echo what Destiny said too, because I forgot to mention it too, just about like what you score on the LSAT like doesn't indicate how well you're going to do in law school. Because I had the same experience. I talked about I didn't get a very high LSAT score, but I ended up like also like graduating at the top of my class. And so I have a lot of feelings about like the LSAT being like terrible and gatekeepy, but I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, unfortunately. But yeah, if you do the LSAT, take the steps, do the work, you're going to be fine in law school. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, same with GREs. They were not my friend, but they did not show what kind of work I was going to do actually when I got into Purdue. For those listening,
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, sorry. So I also want to say something first about the majors and like what you study in undergrad. I think it's a trade-off, either like whichever way you go, because if you are more STEM, like Destiny said, that opens a lot of doors in law school that you otherwise would not be able to do. Like you can't really go into intellectual property unless you know something about technology and the things that you work with intellectual property. It's also, I think it's probably harder to transition into law school from undergrad if you're not in a reading and writing intensive major. But at the same time, when you're applying to law schools, admissions officers are really interested in people. They see a million political science and history and English majors. And if you're, like bioengineering or something crazy, then they'll take note of that, and that will be really good for your chances of admission. And then also for the LSAT, one other thing I wanted to say was, although you shouldn't feel pressure to like take the LSAT again, if you're not happy with your first score, don't be afraid to take the LSAT again. I did, and it was honestly one of the best decisions I made. I did a lot better the second time, and I got a good enough scholarship that like I'm not worried about student debt now, which has been a huge relief. And honestly, it was like one of the best decisions I've ever made to take it twice. So don't be afraid to take it twice or 3 times. Maybe don't take it more than 3 times because that's just masochistic. But yeah, don't be afraid to do that.
All right, all wonderful advice here. For those of you listening at home, they mentioned Model Arab League. If you have interest in that, we are hoping to relaunch it. SAU's Model Arab League, it's been on hiatus the last couple of years due to COVID, but we're hoping to relaunch it this fall. So feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you on my Model Arab League recruitment list. So I do have a couple other questions, but I really want to get to questions that people who are here listening might want to ask. So at this point, the floor is open. Feel free to unmute and ask your question, or if you want to put it in the chat, I think that we can follow your questions in the chat too, but yeah, floor is open for conversation now. And Destiny, Brian, Clarissa, if anything else comes to mind, feel free to add in too, but we'll take a little bit of time here now for questions from anyone. And it's okay if there are none. You guys, I mean, it just means that you guys have done an amazing job providing a lot of sharing your experiences, but providing a lot of incredible advice so far to everyone. And yeah, this is going to be a wonderful resource for certainly for our department in history, but for the university too, just to get this out there. And,
Can I just jump in here for a minute?
Sure.
I just want to ramble for a little bit about law school admissions, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, because I've talked to a lot of people about it before. And so when it comes down to it, law school admissions are mostly about your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score. There are other factors that play into it, but I don't know, maybe about 90% of it are those two things. And those are two things that generally you can control. So, I mean, to an extent, at least. So if you are, really wanting to go to a particular law school, try to work really hard and get good grades if you can in undergrad. Of course, there's limits to what every person can do, and whatever you can do is fine. And same thing with LSAT. And then I'd say for choosing what school you want to go to, the first thing that I would think about is, where do you want to live and practice law? Because based on where you go to law school, that can kind of limit your options. For instance, if you want to be in Michigan, like choosing any of the law schools in Michigan, is a good idea, because people here know those law schools. It's going to be easy to find connections and get a job. But if you want to go practice law in California, maybe you should go to a law school in California. Same with any region. Also, law school rankings are a weird thing. It's weird how much status people put on it, but to a certain extent, if you go to a higher ranked law school, it will tend to open more doors, give you like a little bit more geographic flexibility, things like that. Ultimately though, wherever you go to law school, if you do really well, you can do just about anything. And even if you don't do so well in law school, you can still get a job. It's like you might have to work a little bit harder to get opportunities and so forth. But I don't know, there are just a ton of considerations that go into it when you're thinking about law school: how much it costs, how much scholarship money you can get, what what they have good programs in and what you want to practice in at the end. It's a different decision for anybody, but I think kind of those things that I've mentioned were the things that played the biggest role in my decision for where I was applying to law school. And I think that broadly, those are probably important considerations for everybody. But I don't know, I imagine we're giving out our contact info at the end of this, and I'm happy to email with anybody who's thinking about law school, thinking about where they should go.
Brian actually helped me when I was considering going to law school, and it's kind of come full circle. The firm I'm working at this summer, Brian, you have a good friend that works there, don't you? So it's a small world. The legal
So
community
she
is.
actually just left to become a public defender, but
Good for her.
she spoke very highly about the firm. Yes.
I guess I can
So-
add something. I know you had another question to ask, and I kind of wanted to touch on it a little bit, in case you don't ask it. I don't really have a plan on what I want to do with my law degree. I went into law school with an open mind, and I'm still kind of trying to keep that. One of the reasons I chose to go to law school is because a law degree is so versatile, and there's so many different career paths you can go into with one. And so I'm kind of just keeping an open mind. I have no clue what kind of law I want to practice. I've done a little bit of family law, a little bit of nonprofit work, criminal appeals. I'm hoping to do some kind of judicial externship in the fall. This summer, I'm working like business law, which I never thought I'd even try, but I'm going to try it and do transactional work and see if I like it. So I think that that's a good mentality to have going into law school, not closing off any doors for yourself, because almost everyone that goes into law school thinking they know what kind of law they want to do changes their mind. And so I think seeing law school as a versatile opportunity instead of a tunnel vision path is a good strategy.
Great advice. I know one of the SAU alum that I had asked, I think last year to be on this, John Mark, he's went to law school, did very well, but I don't think he's even in law anymore. I think he moved into cybersecurity. So, law school, you might go to law school, you might not even end up, practicing law. You might move into a different field, and law school can be, people don't necessarily always think about law school as a gateway into some other field as well too.
One piece of advice I was given was that everyone wants a lawyer on their team. So a law degree can really get you a job anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just jump off of that and say, like, when I'm looking back at like my resume of the things that I have done with my law degree or as being an attorney, it's very not conventional. I'm realizing, like I mentioned before, I ended up working at the Department of Justice, and when and like as part of that, I ended up being a part of this movement in the government to just like help staff. It was essentially like a campground where I was working with kids, and I wasn't doing any lawyering. I was just practicing my Spanish and like helping kids move from activity to activity and like answering their questions, because they literally had just been like flown from Texas to Michigan. We had big maps on the wall, and I'd be like, do you know where you are? And they'd say no, and I'd point, and they'd say, that's really far. I'm like, yeah, it is. And we talk about that. And so I also wanted to mention another thing that I have been doing like outside of my day job with my law degree. I've been volunteering with an organization called the National Lawyers Guild, which helps to essentially, one of the things that they do is help represent protesters that have been arrested during protests. So especially a couple summers ago when George Floyd was killed and there was a whole bunch of protests going on, that's when I first started getting involved with them. And so I was using my law degree in that way to like help people in Detroit who had been arrested because they were out like advocating for justice. And so that's been another really really sort of non-conventional, but interesting and really fulfilling way to use a law degree as well.
Excellent. Well, I know that marketing and alumni offices at SAU are interested in talking with Brian, Destiny, and Clarissa more in the future. And it might very well be that Zoe, Luke, or somebody else watching might have questions to kind of protect your identities, because this is going out on YouTube. I'll put my contact information out there. You can reach me at mark.edwards@arbor.edu. And if you would like to talk with any of our alumni, please feel free to email me and I can put you in touch with them. I'm sure that they would be happy to, talk to you a little bit further about their experiences, give you some advice and what have you. As we kind of wrap this up, I give everyone a kind of final word. I think the couple questions I had left, you've sort of already have answered. Where do you kind of see yourself going in the future? If you know where you're going to be in 10 years, or do you have any other advice that you might offer to people on the Zoom? You've all three of you have already offered such amazing advice already. This has been really a wonderful time. There's so much valuable information here. But I'll give everyone just kind of a few minutes to wrap up if they have anything else they'd like to say. So I'll start with Destiny.
I don't know where I'm going. I think I said that already. I'm just going with the flow, trying to get the best grades that I can and try as much out as I can during my last year after this year's done. I only have 1 year left. So yeah, I think my final piece of advice for law school would be to get involved in things that you enjoy while you're in law school. So I'm in moot court, which is like oral arguments in front of judges and writing briefs and stuff like that. And those are the skills that I like practicing. And so it's fun for me. In addition, I'm on Law Review, which is just it's a journal that publishes scholarly articles in the legal field. And I love research and writing, so that's fun for me. I have friends who are in trial practicum programs where they pretend to be trial attorneys, or there's clinics where you're helping real people in the real world with real problems. So there's a plethora of different kinds of activities in law school. And I think it's easy to let yourself get pipelined into the ones that are the best or the most prestigious. But I think it's important to find the ones that you genuinely would enjoy doing, because law school is already hard enough without forcing yourself to do things that you don't like doing.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier, I'm in the middle of a clerkship. I'll be finishing that up next year. This summer, my wife and I are moving to Lansing, and we're planning to be there for the long term. So I will probably start looking for law firm jobs in Lansing. I don't know, maybe in the future I'll want to like work for government. Maybe I'll want to do something else entirely. Maybe I won't even be in the law anymore. Who knows? But whatever the case, I'm just looking forward to whatever happens. I think the future is exciting, and like now that you talk about light at the end of the tunnel at the end of school, and now it's like in the light, which is really cool because they don't know what's going to happen, don't know what I'm going to be doing, in 5 years, like I did, but in school, you kind of know what's going to happen year after year until you get out. In terms of final pieces of advice, I'm going to say that you should not be afraid to try things you think you won't like. And you should also not feel obligated to do things that everybody else thinks you should do. There's going to be a lot of pressure to maybe take certain classes, get involved and get in the leadership of an organization, get on a journal, things like that. And those are all fine and good things. And you should definitely do them if you want to do them, but don't do them if you don't want to do them. You can still be a complete person, a complete law student, a complete lawyer if you don't do the things that everybody else is doing. That being said, all of those things might be completely up your alley. Maybe you want to do everything, and that's okay too. Just make sure that it doesn't bury you.
Yeah, this is all fantastic advice. You should follow Destiny and Brian's advice. As far as like advice about whether or not to go to law school, if you're interested, if you want to do it, do it. I think that it's definitely doable, and it's great job security. Like once you pass the bar, then you are a licensed attorney, and as long as you like don't completely mess up a case, you have like a duty to know what you're doing a little bit, but you have lots of job options in the future in many widely varied paths. Some advice I think for law school is don't be afraid to talk to your professors. Don't be afraid to go to office hours. Like I actually found that like I enjoyed my law professors a lot more than I enjoyed being with my classmates. that led to some really fascinating conversations just about law or like things that I was struggling to understand in class, but also just about life in general. Also, make good friends with the law librarians. They are incredibly knowledgeable and super helpful anytime you need help researching things. I think professors like to talk to students, so don't be intimidated.
Some do.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, any chance you get to go to office hours, even if you have to like make up a question, just to like have a reason to go. I would highly recommend doing that. You'll always learn something, gain some insight.
I did that all the time, just come up with any question to go talk to my my grad advisor. Wonderful advice. This has been a great evening. Thank you so much for your time and sharing of yourselves. Clarissa, Brian, Destiny, we're so proud of you guys and how well you're representing SAU. Thank you so much, and thanks for all the help you're going to provide to to SAU students, past and future, with what you've offered here tonight. So I'm going to stop recording, and then if we want to talk a little bit more, we can.
Can I actually maybe? Do you guys have like jobs through law school, or have you just been like law school is your full-time job? Because I currently work 2 jobs through college, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that if I go to law school.
Yeah, so I think everyone I know in law school has to take out loans for living, at least for your first year. It's just a lot. Trying to support yourself completely and be completely financially dependent on your own income during law school, I think would be very hard. So I take out loans. I also work part-time, but it's only like 10 hours a week. And it's at the library. I just do homework while I work. So it's not even a real job. So yeah, that would be I wouldn't suggest working a full-time job or 2 part-time jobs during law school, because I think it would be very hard to do your work on top of any extracurriculars you want to do, but people do it. So it's really up to the individual person.
Go ahead, Clarissa. I see.
Okay. Yeah. It's a lot. It is a lot. I think I think the ABA has like restrictions on like how many hours students are like supposed to be working. So that's something to keep in mind, but like also you got to live and you got to eat. And if taking out those kinds of loans aren't an option for you, then there's always ways you can talk to you can probably talk to the law school advisors about an adjusted class schedule if you need to work or something like that. But if you have the means or the ability to take out loans to, especially like Destiny said, for your 1L year, that's really helpful. I had a professor who told me that like he worked nights as an EMT during law school, but that's wild. He doesn't count. So like some people do it, but if there's any way at all that you can just like focus on just law school, that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think just about the only thing I have to add is if you can get a job that is like a part-time job that is some way law related, like if you are working in the library, if you're a research assistant for a professor, something like that, that's a really good option. Obviously, everybody's in a different circumstance. Not everybody will have those opportunities. I do know that at some schools, Michigan is one of them. If you are a graduate student instructor, then you get your tuition for free, which is a really, really good deal. So if whatever law school you go to, if you can find an opportunity like that, that's definitely something worth looking into.
Yeah, and some summer internships can also be paid too. So that can be a good source of income. I did that at least my 2L summer. And then I also ended up, like I mentioned, I was a TA. That was a paid position. It's not like a lot. It's not enough to live on, but it is doing something that both like gets you paid a little bit and like is a great thing to put on your resume. And also like when students don't come to visit, you can just do your own homework in the library, like Destiny said. So there's opportunities like that as well.
I wanted to add a little note too. I think that a lot of people come into law school and take on far too much at once, and there's a huge mental health crisis among law students and attorneys in general. And so I think that it's important to keep balance in mind at all times when you're entering this stage in life. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as something to be considered in all of that.
Yes, there's definitely such a thing as too much. I know I had one semester where I was taking a full slate of classes. I was on the board of 3 organizations. I was on a journal. I was a research assistant for a professor. That was too much. I shouldn't have done that. I would recommend not doing that.
Excellent advice, excellent questions, Zoe. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll stop the recording here and thank you, alumni, again. It's been wonderful.